Welcome to the Group Dentistry Now Show, the voice of the DSO industry. Kim Larson and Bill Newman talk to industry leaders about their challenges, successes, and the future of group dentistry. Visit groupdentistrynow.com for more DSO analysis, news, and events. Looking for a job or have a job to fill? Visit joindso.com. We hope you enjoy today's show.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the Group Dentistry Now Show. I'm Bill Newman, and as always, we appreciate you listening in. Without a great audience like you, we wouldn't have great guests like we have here today on the podcast. We have two CEOs here. We have Mark Sinatra, who is a 7-time Inc. 5000 list CEO. He is the CEO of Aspen HR. We're going to find out all about Aspen. They are one of the fastest growing PEOs in the country. And we also have Pete Wong, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Modus Dental Partners. They are a relatively new DSO platform that we're going to find out why they're different, what their growth strategy is, and find out a lot about both Pete and Mark. So first off, gentlemen, thank you both for being here, Mark and Pete. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Bill.
Let's start with you, Mark. Could you give the audience a little bit of your bio, if you wouldn't mind, and then a little bit of information on Aspen HR? And I mentioned that you're a PEO. There may be some people in the audience that don't know what that is, so you might want to fill them in on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Bill. So what a PEO is, we provide essentially a kind of a turnkey bundled HR solution for small, medium-sized companies, really across the key areas of HR, including payroll processing, HR technology, employee benefits, and HR compliance. So PEO stands for Professional Employer Organization. So we've got some larger competitors that are fairly well known, such as ADP and Paychex. So we kind of compete in the same space. So I've been in the PEO industry for 15 plus years now. Been with Aspen for 3.5 years, and appreciate the intro earlier. Like you said, we're definitely on a fast growth trajectory. And one of the industries that we've kind of focused on that has helped us with our growth is really, being a value add HR partner to both, kind of private equity funds and their portfolio companies. And also from an industry perspective, really kind of honing in on the DSO space and being a value added HR partner to growing, dental organizations, which we'll get into a little bit today. So,
excellent. Thank you, Mark. And again, the other CEO we have on today is Pete Wong, Modus Dental Partners. Pete has a really interesting background. He was, before he joined Modus, he was Chief Sales Officer on the vet side of things, National Veterinary Associates. And he also has a background in U.S. Army Special Operations. So, Pete, a little bit about your background, if you wouldn't mind. And then the audience would be really curious to find out about Modus Dental Partners, relatively new platform. So could you discuss yourself and a little bit about the company you're with?
Yeah, sure, Bill. Thanks a lot. Thanks for the warm intro. As you mentioned, I started my career as an officer in the U.S. Army, graduated from West Point, branched infantry, spent 5 years in the Army, the last 3 of which were with the 75th Ranger Regiment, U.S. Army Special Operations Unit. After deploying 4 times, twice to Iraq, twice to Afghanistan, really just got to a point in my life where I had to make a decision for the type of husband and father I wanted to be, and decided to move out of the military. I transitioned into the business world first by going to business school, and then worked in a variety of both finance operations and business development roles. Started as an investment banker in London, moved back to the US, working in manufacturing operations, ultimately running a handful of manufacturing plants, and then was blessed enough to have the opportunity to move into multi-site healthcare, beginning on the veterinary side. I started in operations with National Veterinary Associates, led their Northeast division, and transitioned into business development, where I ultimately took a leadership role. In September of 2022, I had the opportunity to partner with the Thurston Group, where we founded Modis Dental Partners. Modis stands for Modern Implantology and Specialty Dental Partners. We did this in partnership with Dr. Picos. Dr. Picos has 6 multi-specialty dental practices in the Tampa area and has an institute, the Picos Institute, which has been in existence for over 3 decades, has trained 6,500 dentists, both specialists and general practitioners. And Modis's growth strategy has always been a partnership model, and we are focused on growth-oriented, primarily general practitioners that are passionate about patient care and implantology. And our belief was, and as we looked across the dental profession, what we observed was, one, implantology has been growing at a rate disproportionate to the profession at large. 2, due to the growth of technology, more and more general practitioners are placing implants. And thirdly, this came as a bit of a surprise to me, but implantology isn't widely taught in dental school. And as a result, there was a real need for advanced continuing education. And that was what attracted us to the partnership with Dr. Picos. He has, for 3 decades, not only been teaching specialists, but also general practitioners on the placement of implants and is world-renowned. And so we really believe that we're poised to not only grow and attract general practitioners that are passionate about implantology, but really positively impact the profession by arming each and every one of our partners with the very best training available.
Seems like a great partnership, and Picos has a world-renowned name. There's a huge need in the industry for clinicians getting more clinical education and at the same time looking for business support. Don't want to deal with things like HR. Mark's going to talk about that in a second. But yeah, it seems like a great marriage of that clinical education that is really needed out there, that mentorship opportunity, and also, the ability to really focus on what you went to dental school for, right? Dentistry instead of running the business. So, well, that's great. And it was late September of last year, right? So relatively new. Modis is relatively new.
That's right. We actually formed our partnership or finalized our partnership with Dr. Picos in April of 23. And since then, we have had 3 additional partners join the Modis platform.
Well, that's great. That actually leads into the next question, which is really your growth strategy. And you discussed a little bit how Modis Dental Partners differentiates itself from others in the DSO space. And there are a lot, I don't have to tell either one of you this, there are a lot of different models out there. There are a lot of opportunities for dentists looking for partnership. So talk a little bit about the differentiation and then your growth strategy, Pete, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. As you said, the DSO space, you have many options as a dentist thinking about partnership. And for us, we're absolutely committed to every one of our dentists being equity partners. And we're also very open to the possibility of site level joint ventures as well. For us, it is key that anyone joining the platform is aligned with a mindset of continuing education and growth. And when you think about DSOs, I think table stakes are being able to support the back office, take away some of the administrative aspects of business ownership, And then you think about, that's if that's the defensive side, what is the offensive side, and what is our special or secret sauce? And what we believe is, with any platform, you have to have some angle toward organic growth. And for us, it's a belief that if we partner with doctors that are committed to growing through implantology, that access to the PICOS Institute is the premier way of training and growing that skill set, as proven and evidenced through 3 decades of training. Most recently, Dr. PICOS has launched a continuum for the fundamentals of implantology. So just by way of background, Dr. PICOS is a world-renowned oral surgeon, has, as I said, a multi-specialty practice, and his institute has always been taught by himself and other dental specialists across, periodontists, prosthodontists, and himself as an oral surgeon. Historically, Dr. PICOS has really played in the area of what I would consider the advanced level implantology placement, zygomatics, et cetera. And what he is now doing is also launching a continuum for the fundamentals. And what that allows us to do as a platform is meet any partner along their implant journey and provide them access to advanced continuing education that would elevate their skill set. So that's number one. Number two is, and Dr. PICOS will say the same, there's many doctors that attend his courses, learn the skills and the tools to place implants, and they go back to the practice and they never place an implant, or they place an implant and then they never place another. And much of that comes down to confidence. It comes down to having access to a community of practitioners where if they run into a complication, they have easy access to experts in the field. And as we grow our platform, we continue to accumulate more and more experts, and really fostering a community that is supportive of any one of our partners attempting to grow into implantology, or continue to grow in their journey of implantology.
So while we're still focused on your growth strategy, and we have Mark with us, talk a little bit about how you and Aspen HR found each other, and why you've partnered with Aspen HR, and how they're assisting Modus Dental partners with your growth.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to touch on that. Mark and I go way back, probably about 25 plus years back, actually.
Crazy to think about how long,
yeah.
how long it is.
Yeah, Mark's younger brother, Joe, and I were best friends growing up from elementary school, actually through high school, and continued to be very good friends. And as I entered into my role, I just happened to be catching up with his brother, Joe. And he mentioned, hey, you should speak to Mark if you're considering a PEO. At this point, I had already initiated a search. I was working with 3 other PEOs, one of which was one of the large players, and 2 boutique PEOs. And I started a conversation off with Mark. And I told him, I'm looking for a true partner, a strategic partner, an on-the-ground partner. And I'm all ears, but candidly, I've already started down this process. And also, to be very clear, one of those groups was in pole position because other Thurston portfolio companies had already used this PEO. And what differentiated Aspen HR from everyone else is all around their assessment of our healthcare benefits. And to be clear, of the 4, 3 had the same recommendation. The 3 had stated, stay with the current plan that you're on, and come July, you ought to either renew, or at that point, we can go out to market and find another health plan. Aspen came back with a very different recommendation. They said, look, we have run our analysis. What we can tell is there is an above average chance that if you wait until the renewal period, you're going to face a large price increase. And unfortunately, that large price increase is what we're going to have to take to market to then look for other plans. So you're starting off with a higher benchmark pricing. And so what we recommend is you transition over to this plan. We've mapped, or I should say mirrored, the plan that you currently have so that your team faces no disruption. We can lock this plan in for 12 months. As you grow, your pricing power will increase. And in that 12-month period, when we go to renew, we can almost guarantee that you'll have lower pricing going forward. And sure as the sun rises, that is exactly how it's played out. We're coming to open enrollment in June, and we're going to see some favorability based on our growth. But it was a key differentiator for me that this was a group, a team that was going to go above and beyond. That continues to be reinforced with our partnership. We are a buy and build business. M&A is a big part of what we do. Every week, I have a deal execution call. A member of Mark's team, two members of Mark's team actually, are on that call weekly. They're providing us with insight on all things human capital related, to include benefits, but also they'll take a deep look at, do we have any risk associated with the profile of comp structures of the team we're looking at? Are they paying below market? And that's a risk for us. Is this an in-market type of team? So they've been a wonderful partner from start through present day.
Thanks for that, Pete. Mark, this really leads into some feedback from you. Well, first off, it sounds like your partnership with Modus was a lot different, or your approach with Modus was a lot different than some of the other PEOs. Can you explain why maybe you did the work to say, hey, you can make it changes now and lock in rates, which would be more beneficial? And why did some of these other PEOs, or all of the other ones that Pete had talked to, pretty much say, just stick with what you have? Why would they say that? I'm curious.
Well, Pete was doing such a good job. I thought I wouldn't, have to really say anything, for the next 30 minutes, but it was so good. So thank you, Pete.
Yeah, you got it.
It's a good question, Bill. I mean, I think, ultimately, and I'm not meaning this to come off a negative way at all, but it's really two things. First, we're business people, right? So like we look at how HR can positively impact and create value from a strategic perspective, first and foremost. So it's kind of the opposite of what I would call being solely transactional, where, when we talk to a prospective client, it's not about, getting that sale at all. It's really about, let's first understand the strategy. What are you trying to achieve in the short term and long term? And then let's craft a solution that meets those goals. And, I don't mean it to sound overly simplistic, but really at a high level, it's really what it is. And so I think when it comes to, kind of the buy and build strategy that Pete and his team have really kind of effectively executed on in a fairly short amount of time. I mean, you're talking about, Pete, I think you said like three add-ons in about a year. And I think there's a pretty robust pipeline going forward. So I mean that's that's a lot of activity. So, as the HR and benefits and payroll provider, we've got to understand, given that strategy for these acquisitions, what's roughly going to be the headcount? How is that going to change the kind of the risk factors and the demographics that could impact, the employee benefit strategy? What parts of the country, what, kind of align with the networks for the medical carriers. How are these deals typically going to be structured? Stock, asset purchase, and, are the EINs going to be, kind of absorbed, or are they going to, stay the same for some period of time? So those are all the things that, like, we know kind of what to ask and look for, because we have solely focused, and I failed to mention this in the intro, solely focused on serving the needs of private equity funds and their portfolio companies since we started, 6.5 years ago. So because we've been, we're a vertically focused service provider, it has enabled us to have kind of that edge, or really kind of, I would say, domain expertise when it comes to providing our services, particularly for this industry. And I'll say the opposite too. Like, if we're talking to, I don't know, like an organization, I'll just throw a random one out, like a window washing company, right? I mean, that's not an industry we specialize in, quite honestly. So, we may not be the best provider, but we do think, we certainly are, the best provider for, private equity funds, and particularly ones that are in what I would call the healthcare space, that have a distributed model, multiple locations, multiple sites, multiple states, growing quickly, organically, and through add-ons. We do think we're the best provider because, we've proven that time and time again with some of our clients. So.
And I know on your website, you talk a lot about being a white glove PEO, and you've customized your service model to really meet the needs of DSOs. So you touched on that a little bit with your expertise working with private equity backed healthcare platforms, multi-site. Can you talk a little bit about some of the customization that you do specifically to DSOs?
Yeah, I think, thank you. I think, when you look at, the DSO model, obviously it's by nature, it's clinic based, it's in person, and, there's a personal element to it, where when, we take on a new DSO client, whether that's as a standalone or whether that's part of, an add-on acquisition strategy that Pete and his team are executing on, we are treating that with the highest level of care, because we understand that the folks that really make the magic happen is, it's everybody in that practice, right? Whether they are, patient facing in person or maybe on the phone. And so we need to make sure everybody's feeling good, right, about the transition, about their new benefit plan. They have a clear understanding of how payroll is going to work. And, most importantly, when they have a question or concern, they know who to contact from our team for what kind of question. And that, we have a rapid response model where, we look at our SLAs, which, are much more aggressive from a time to response perspective than I think, most of our peers. So, we ensure that, part of the white glove experience is that our clients are getting a response on a very timely basis, particularly when it comes to, when they're in the implementation phase. So, going back one last thing to your question, when there is a new group that comes on, because it's clinic and site-based, we will frequently go on site and actually take, the employees through, like I said, all of these things that I mentioned before, and we do that on site in person. And I think, from what I've seen in the last 3 or 4 years, through the pandemic and the aftermath and whatnot, certainly, we've I think all benefited from the proliferation of leveraging Zoom, Teams, et cetera, for business related communication. But I feel like on the other side of the coin, like kind of the lost art is really building that face-to-face relationship. And I think that has unfortunately kind of gone by the wayside. But we strike, I think, a very kind of, I would say, nimble balance between the two. And we have not forgotten about the importance of having that in-person communication, particularly when it comes to a practice that is entering into a new partnership or acquisition, because it's, again, very, very, very important to treat that with the utmost level of care and concern.
Yeah, I might add some finer points even to what Mark has mentioned about the white glove service. Bill, I'm sure this would resonate with you and all of your listeners, that in any transition, it's not just the provider, but it is the entire team that is critical to the success of a practice. And second to compensation, benefits are critical. And being able to provide comparable benefits is critical. And being able to communicate that in detail is critical. And at Modis, our stance is we want to be a partner-friendly business. And a big part of that is making sure that the team members are well cared for, particularly through a transition. And as Mark mentioned, in every one of our integrations, so right now we have with Dr. Pico 6 sites plus the Institute plus 3 additional sites. One of the sites has 76 team members, so it's a large dental practice. In every instance, a member of his team has come on site with Modis as a Modis team member effectively, and presented benefits. And not just a canned presentation of these are your benefits. There was a tremendous amount of homework that went in and preparation that went into those meetings. And to be specific, line by line, every single team member, what their current benefits are, what the cost is, what the employer contribution is, what the new plan looks like, if we would need to gross up income in order to keep the team members economically whole. Every single person was accounted for. And when we meet with the team, we stay the entire day and we meet with every individual so that each and every person can feel very comfortable and confident that the team is going to be cared for. And it makes all the difference in a transition. And Bill, as you know, and all of your listeners know, failing at integrations is the absolute worst way to get started in a partnership. And so, the work that Mark's team does is critical to a smooth and easy transition for practices during what is a very tumultuous time.
Yeah, that is a great point, Pete, about integration and some of the challenges that you might, it's probably not unlike an interview with a prospective employee. The group may look good on paper and may be, an ideal cultural fit, but that integration process is key to making that work.
Absolutely.
Just like onboarding an individual.
Yeah. It's one thing to stand in front of a group of people and talk about core values and the importance of culture. But if you miss the detail about how their benefits are going to play out, it's all lip service. And so to be able to introduce ourselves during a welcome meeting and have a partner like Aspen with us, and then be able to talk to each individual and show them that we've done the work. When we say that we intend to provide them comparable or better benefits, it's not lip service. every single person has been thought of on an individual level and accounted for on an individual level. And us being able to not only make that representation, but then back it up on the very day that we meet, it goes a long way with putting a team at ease. Because as you know, no integration ever goes perfect. So being able to win the goodwill and show what our intention is on the front end during that first meeting is critical to setting ourselves up for a successful partnership.
Pete, we talked a lot about the growth of Modus Dental Partners. When you take a look at the next 2 to 4 years at a macro level, what does the DSO space look like? What do the opportunities look like from your perspective for Modus?
Sure. I think it's safe to say that the space is still relatively fragmented, and there are many opportunities for DSOs to make a positive impact on the profession. And I also would be remiss if I didn't state the obvious that in the next year, with our current interest rate environment, there is more and more a focus on delivering operational excellence, or I think many of the people you've spoken with have mentioned organic growth in one way, shape, or form. For us, I see the opportunity that Modus brings, particularly as an opportunity in this time and space where organic growth is so critical, because the question really becomes, how do you grow? And in my mind, there is a path to growth that advances the profession in a positive way, and a path to growth that may not advance the profession in a positive way. And for us, being able to elevate the care of patients through implantology education, advanced continuing education in implantology, is a real opportunity for us to drive organic growth in a positive manner that in the future we'll be able to look back on and proudly and see how Modus, in our partnership with our founding doctor, Dr. Picos, has been able to move and advance the profession. Relatedly, in order to grow the practice, you have to have the skill to organically grow the practice, whether that is operational efficiency, focus on expansion of the physical plant of a practice. And among our partners, every single one of them has a growth plan in place. It's something that we talk about actually prior to ever consummating a partnership, just to make sure that we're aligned from a cultural perspective. That I think it's helpful to have a conversation about the future. In the next 2 to 4 years, it stands to reason that the market will continue to open back up. Right now, we seem to be in a little bit of a slow spot with valuations, not only at the portfolio level, but also at the practice level. And this is largely driven by interest rate pressure. But in the next 2 to 4 years, the market tends to be cyclical, and likely will be on an upswing at some point during that time. And we'll see more and more transactions happening across the space. But for us at Modus, we're just very focused on executing on our plan, finding great partners, focused on growing specifically in implantology that are culturally aligned with us, and helping each of them as individuals grow and achieve their dreams for their practice and their team members and patients.
Thank you, Pete, for the insight regarding the DSO space. I think you're right on with what we're seeing right now, and in the trends, the slowdown that we've seen in the past year, the focus on same store organic growth. Easier said than done. You can say the word, but how do you do it? And there are a lot of different ways to do that. I think a lot of it is, how can we do it clinically and that becomes one of the biggest challenges. And if you don't have the skill set, where do you get that from? So I think Modus is really positioned well to offer that clinical excellence, specifically on the implant side. So, Mark, this one's for you. This is more wrapped around HR and benefit trends that you see. So what should people in our audience, those emerging dental groups, the DSOs that are listening, what should they be watching out for? What do you see on your radar?
Yeah, I think a couple of things jump out. One thing on the HR end that's actually has been announced and supposed to go into effect actually later this month of March, is some revised guidance on how employers classify workers. So when an employer has a worker, they're in almost all cases a W-2 employee, but in some cases you can justify that worker to be classified as a 1099 contractor. And there's been some revised guidance out there that, like I said, that's going to go into effect later this month, that is going to make it harder and more stringent criteria for an employer to classify that worker as a 1099 contractor. So, what we're recommending to our clients across many industries, but particularly in the DSO space, is to later this month in March and April, just do a refresh and review of all your workers, particularly your 1090, if you do have any 1099s, and to ensure that they're classified appropriately. And if they're not, then you need to figure out a way to convert them to W-2 so that it doesn't impact the business, and understand financially what that kind of equivalent wage would be from converting somebody from a 1099 to W-2 salary. So that is one thing that's kind of pressing, that's on the horizon as it relates to HR compliance. Another thing that on the employee benefits side, and this one unfortunately it's just been going on for several years, and it's unfortunate, but the rising costs, the escalating costs of medical insurance continues to be a pressing issue, particularly for our healthcare clients. And what we're seeing in I would say the open market for renewals, not on necessarily on Aspen's plan, but just overall in terms of industry benchmarking, we're seeing companies get renewals of high single digits, and in some cases even low double digits. I know with Aspen's, with our partnership with Aetna, we've been able to achieve very stable renewals of 4%, really since inception. But the broader market has continued to deal with larger increases year over year on medical insurance, that has made it really tough for like that employee to continue to afford. Because if you look at wage growth and you overlay that with the cost of medical insurance increasing, the medical insurance is increasing at a far faster rate than what we've seen annual wage growth. So it's becoming a bigger issue for employees and employers, and there's a couple solutions out there. There's a lot of options, like I said, nowadays to potentially reduce medical costs. I know oftentimes when we see a practice that has their a medical policy that, like I said, is in the open, quote unquote, open market, through the state exchange, in almost all cases, we're able to save that practice, thousands and thousands of dollars, through our large group medical plan with Aetna. So that certainly could be a solution. There's other solutions out there as well, and particularly if you're of certain size and scale, 50 or I would say at least 50 to 100 employees. Sometimes going to some sort of partially self-funded or self-funded route could be an option as well, but there has to be a lot of analysis done to ensure that that's going to be the right solution for you. So that is kind of the silver lining, is that we've seen more options to reduce medical costs nowadays than I think what existed several years ago, but it still continues to be a challenge, particularly like for smaller practices that have 10 employees, 15 employees. It can be very cost prohibitive at times to provide high quality benefits program. So those are the two things that we're continuing to see on the horizon here from an HR and benefits perspective.
Well, that's some great insights, Mark. Mark, if anyone in the audience wants to find out more about Aspen HR, or if they want to contact you, how do they do so?
Yeah, thank you. Yep, definitely check us out on the website to learn more, www.aspenhr.com. Feel free to send me personally an email as well. It's Mark with a K at aspenhr.com. And would love to talk to you and learn more about your practice.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Pete, if anybody wants to find out about a potential partnership with Modus Dental Partners, or they just want to reach out to you, Pete, how would they do so?
Yeah, easiest way to reach out to me, email at pete@modusdental.com. And if they want to learn more about Modus Dental, you can check us out on our webpage, modusdental.com.
Great. And we'll make sure we drop those URLs in the show notes, as well as those email addresses. Thank you, Mark Sinatra, CEO of Aspen HR, and Pete Wong, CEO of Modus Dental Partners, for being on the Group Dentistry Now show today. Appreciate it. Some really great conversation. Got to learn a lot about a relatively new platform out there, Modus Dental Partners, their partnership with Picos, and also all about HR and PEO. And really, I love the white glove service that you provide, that customization. I think that's something that we really don't see much of today. And I think in particular, with all these DSOs and their models being so vastly different, that's critical to any type of partnership with a PEO in the dental industry. So thanks again, Mark. Thanks, Pete, for being on the show. We appreciate it. And until next time, I am Bill Newman, and this is the Group Dentistry Now Show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Group Dentistry Now Show has listeners across North and South America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. If you like our show, subscribe today, and please tell your colleagues about us.